I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and my senior year of high school, I was discovered at the mall because where else were we all hanging out in the late 80s by a former model. And that led me to New York and Europe and a long, lucrative career as a model. And in 1992, my agent invited me to a dinner to a restaurant on the Upper East Side of New York. And there were other models there and the usual men hangers on at this dinner. And one of the men who was sitting at this table was Jeffrey Epstein. And I had never heard of him or anything, but we got to know each other and we talked a lot about Clinton and Gore. And I enjoyed the fact that he was politically engaged and wasn't infantilizing me and talking to me about that. The next time that I saw Jeffrey was a few months later in December of 92 at Donald Trump's Plaza Hotel Christmas party. And it became very clear then that he and Donald were really, really good friends and spent a lot of time together. After that, Jeffrey Epstein expressed a lot of interest in me, and we started seeing each other. When Jeffrey and I would talk, he mentioned Trump frequently. He was clearly a close friend, and they were spending a lot of time together. Late winter, early spring of 93, I was on a walk with Jeffrey from his brownstone on the Upper East Side down Fifth Avenue when Jeffrey looked at me and said, let's go stop by and see Trump. And so we went to Trump Tower and went up the elevator. And moments later, Trump was greeting us and he pulled me into him and started groping me. He put his hands all over my breasts, my waist, my butt, and I froze. And I froze because I was so deeply confused about what was happening because the hands were moving all over me. Yet these two men were like smiling at one another and continuing on in their conversation. Jeffrey and I left, and I got into the elevator with him. And I felt this like, he didn't look at me, he didn't speak to me. And I felt this like seething rage around him. His whole energy shifted. And when we got down to the sidewalk, he looked at me and started just berating me. He kept saying, "Why did you let him do that? Why did you let him put his hands all over you? What?" And he made me feel so disgusting. And I remember at that moment being so utterly confused. Number one, I thought, well, yeah, why did I let him do that? And then I was confused because, well, but why is Jeffrey mad? Because he's the one that took me up there. And I was also confused because I was someone who really prided myself as being sort of one of the tough models who was problematic because I fought back against the predators in the industry. I defended fellow models on the streets of Paris when we would be grabbed or harassed. So how did I let that happen? I I felt so humiliated and so sick to my stomach and was so upset. Um, and as I absorbed what happened a few minutes later, I felt like that was some sort of sick bet or game between the two of them. I was rolled in there like a piece of meat for some kind of challenge or twisted game. And I felt horrendous. And not long after that, a postcard of Mar-a-Lago was couriered to my agent. And there was a personal message on the back from Donald Trump. I still have that postcard, and it makes me sick to look at it. And it takes me back to that feeling of confusion and being frozen and humiliated. And That is why I am here tonight. I figured it was time to share this, and I'm ready to win this election. The thought of that monster being back in the White House is my absolute worst nightmare. So thank you very much for including me in this like remarkable group of women. Seriously.